You've been sold a lie about retirement, and it's going to cost you decades of your life. Right now, somewhere in America, a financial advisor is telling someone they need at least $2 million saved before they can even think about walking away from their job. Some advisors push that number even higher, to 3 million, maybe 5 million. The entire retirement industry has built itself on a single belief: that freedom is so expensive, so far out of reach, that you'll spend 40 years chasing it and still might not get there. But what if the math they're showing you is based on assumptions you never agreed to? What if there's a completely different calculation that changes everything? The traditional retirement model isn't designed to get you free as quickly as possible. It's designed to keep you working, saving, and paying management fees for as long as possible. The question most financial planners ask is this: how much money do you need to maintain your exact same lifestyle, in your exact same city, with your exact same spending habits, from age 65 until you die? That's the equation they solve. But there's a different question almost nobody asks. How much money would it take to make work optional, to give you complete control over your time, to let you wake up every single day and choose what matters to you instead of what pays you? Those two questions sound similar, but the answers are worlds apart. And the second question, the one about real freedom, has an answer that might shock you. What if you didn't need $2 million? What if the number was closer to $300,000? That's not a typo. $300,000, invested wisely and paired with some smart lifestyle choices, could be enough to make employment completely optional. Now, before you close this video thinking that sounds impossible, let me walk you through the actual math, the real-world examples, and the strategy that thousands of people are already using to escape the traditional retirement trap decades earlier than they were told they could. The whole idea starts with rethinking what retirement actually means. The financial industry has convinced most people that retirement is about replacing your income. If you're making $70,000 a year while working, they tell you that you'll need $70,000 a year in retirement. But why? Think about how much of your current spending exists only because you have a job. You're buying expensive lunches because you don't have time to cook. You're spending money on a work wardrobe. You're paying for a car and gas and insurance because you have to commute. You're dropping cash on vacations because you only get 2 weeks off and you need to make them count. You're paying for stress relief, for entertainment, for things that help you recover from the energy your job takes from you. But if you remove the job, you remove most of that spending too. When you're not working, you have time to prepare your own meals. You don't need professional clothes. You don't need to commute. You're not stressed, so you don't need expensive ways to unwind. You can travel during off-peak times when flights and hotels are cheaper. Studies and real-world data show that people who leave traditional employment often see their spending drop by 30 to 50% without any loss in quality of life. In fact, many report their quality of life improves because they have more time, less stress, and more control. So the first assumption the retirement industry makes, that you'll need to replace your full income, falls apart immediately when you examine it honestly. The second assumption is even more flawed. The idea that you'll stay exactly where you are. If your job is the only reason you're living in an expensive city, why would you stay there once the job is gone? The cost of living in major American cities is dramatically higher than in dozens of other places around the world, where the quality of life is just as good and often better. A comfortable middle-class life in San Francisco or New York might cost you $70,000 or $80,000 a year. That same quality of life, or better, costs $15,000 a year in Lisbon. It costs $12,000 in Chiang Mai. It costs $14,000 in Medellin. You get better weather, better food, safer streets, more walkable neighborhoods, and stronger communities in many of these places, all for a fraction of the cost. This is called geographic arbitrage, and it's the single most powerful tool for accelerating financial independence that almost nobody talks about. The reason nobody talks about it is simple. It doesn't benefit the people selling you retirement plans. If you understood that moving to a lower-cost country could cut your retirement funding needs by 70%, you might stop working 20 years earlier. And that's 20 years of fees and commissions the financial services industry loses. So instead, they build their calculators around the most expensive possible lifestyle in the most expensive possible location and call that the baseline. Then they scare you with inflation projections, healthcare costs, and longevity tables, all designed to keep you saving and working and paying them for as long as possible. Let me show you the actual numbers. If you take $300,000 and invest it in a diversified portfolio of low-cost index funds and dividend-paying stocks, you can reasonably expect to generate around 4% per year in returns without touching the principal. That's $12,000 annually or $1,000 per month. In most American cities, $1,000 a month is nowhere near enough to live on, but in Portugal, in Thailand, in Mexico, in Colombia, in dozens of other countries, $1,000 a month funds a completely comfortable life. Not survival mode. Not scraping by. A genuinely good life. Let's get specific. In Lisbon, you can rent a one-bedroom apartment in a safe, walkable neighborhood for around $700 a month. Add in utilities, internet, food, local healthcare through Portugal's national system, transportation, phone service, and entertainment, and you're looking at total monthly expenses between $1,200 and $1,400. You're living in one of the most beautiful cities in Europe, with incredible food, perfect weather, and access to the rest of the continent through budget airlines. Your quality of life is objectively high, and $12,000 a year from your investments gets you most of the way there, with just a small gap you can close by living a bit more frugally or picking up occasional freelance work. In Chiang Mai, Thailand, the numbers are even better. You can rent a modern one-bedroom apartment with a pool and a gym for $350 a month. Food, utilities, private health insurance, transportation, phone, and entertainment bring your total monthly spending to around $900 to $1,000. That's $11,000 to $12,000 per year. You're living in a modern city with world-class healthcare, incredible street food, warm weather year-round, and access to the rest of Southeast Asia for weekend trips, and your $12,000 in annual passive income covers it entirely. Medellin, Colombia offers a similar equation. A nice apartment in a good neighborhood runs $500 a month. Total living expenses come in around $12,000 to $13,000 per year. You're living in a city with perfect spring-like weather every single day, amazing coffee culture, affordable private health care, and a growing community of people doing exactly what you're doing. The math works. It's not theoretical. Thousands of people are living this lifestyle right now, funding comfortable lives in beautiful places with far less capital than traditional retirement advice says you need. Now let's compare that to staying in the United States. If you want to live a basic middle-class life in a mid-tier American city like Austin or Denver, you're looking at minimum $1,500 a month for a studio apartment. Add utilities, food, health insurance, transportation, phone, and basic entertainment, and you're spending at least $3,000 a month, probably closer to $4,000. That's $36,000 to $48,000 per year. To generate that kind of passive income at a 4% withdrawal rate, you'd need $900,000 to $1.2 million. That's 3 to 4 times the capital requirement for a comparable or better quality of life abroad. This is why the standard advice is so disconnected from reality. It's optimizing for the most expensive scenario and calling it the minimum. But let's address the obvious concerns, because I know what you're thinking. What about healthcare? American healthcare is insanely expensive without employer coverage, but American healthcare isn't your only option. Portugal's National Health Service covers residents, including foreign retirees, for less than $50 a month. Spain has similar programs. Many countries offer affordable private insurance for expats, typically between $100 and $300 monthly for full coverage. Thailand's private hospitals deliver excellent care at 10 to 20% of US prices. The idea that you're trapped in the American healthcare system is just another assumption worth questioning. What about inflation? Fair question. If you're withdrawing 4% annually and inflation runs at 3%, your purchasing power could erode over time. But remember, your $300,000 stays invested. If your portfolio grows at 7% and you withdraw 4%, you're still gaining 3% per year, roughly keeping pace with inflation. And most people in this situation find ways to generate some additional income. Teaching English online, freelance consulting, small digital projects. When your baseline expenses are $12,000 a year, earning an extra $3,000 or $4,000 from occasional work makes a huge difference and doesn't feel like a job because it's optional. What about family and friends? This is the most personal objection, and it's valid. Moving abroad means distance from your existing social network. For some people, that's a deal breaker. Aging parents, young kids, deep community roots. If you're truly anchored to a specific location by responsibilities you can't move, then yes, you'll need more capital to retire there. But a lot of people overestimate how tied down they really are. Adult children don't need you next door. Video calls and annual visits maintain relationships. Friends naturally drift over time anyway, regardless of geography. And the expat communities in these places are full of people who worried about isolation and quickly built new social circles that felt even stronger because everyone chose to be there. Here's the thing nobody tells you. $300,000 is achievable within 10 to 20 years for someone with a middle-class income who's willing to save aggressively. If you can save $2,000 a month, which is tough but possible on a $75,000 to $100,000 salary, and invest it in low-cost index funds, averaging 8% annual returns, you'll hit $300,000 in about 10 years. If you can only save $1,000 a month, it takes 15 years to get close, 20 years to comfortably exceed the target. It's not easy. It requires living below your means, skipping lifestyle inflation, and staying disciplined through market ups and downs. But it's actually possible, unlike saving 2 or 3 million, which is out of reach for most people no matter how hard they try. The accumulation phase means making sacrifices, living with roommates or in a cheaper area, driving a used car, cooking at home, avoiding consumer debt, investing raises instead of upgrading your lifestyle. But here's the key. These sacrifices are temporary. You're trading 10 to 15 years of frugality for 30 to 40 years of freedom. Most people do the opposite. They optimize for comfort today and stay trapped in jobs they hate for decades. Neither choice is wrong, but they lead to completely different lives. You just have to be honest about which one you actually want. Let me be clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not saying everyone should do this. I'm not saying living abroad is better than living in America. I'm not saying 300,000 works for every single person in every situation. What I am saying is that for a certain type of person, someone who's flexible about location, doesn't need a high-consumption lifestyle, and has the psychological capacity to direct their own time without external structure, $300,000 is genuinely enough to make work optional. That might be 20 or 30% of people, not everyone. But if you're in that group, the traditional advice is lying to you. Here's my challenge. Test your assumptions before accepting them. Take a month and live in Lisbon, or Chiang Mai, or Medellin. Rent an apartment, cook your meals, use public transit, explore the neighborhoods. Track every dollar you spend. At the end of 30 days, you'll know whether this path works for you. You'll know what it actually costs, whether you could be happy there, whether the trade-offs are worth it. For $2,000 in 1 month of your life, you can validate or invalidate the entire strategy. That's the cheapest and most valuable financial planning you'll ever do. Because if the answer is yes, you just cut your working timeline in half. If the answer is no, you learned something important and can plan accordingly. The people who've done this aren't struggling. They're not living in deprivation. They're living full, interesting, meaningful lives with complete control over their time. They're healthier, less stressed, and happier than most of their peers still grinding away in corporate jobs. They're proof that the conventional retirement timeline is a choice, not a requirement. The question is whether you're willing to question the assumptions you've been sold, run the actual numbers for your situation, and make unconventional choices if they lead to freedom faster. $300,000. Geographic flexibility, modest spending. That's the formula. It's not for everyone, but for the people it fits, it changes everything. If this video made you rethink what's possible, hit the like button and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. Subscribe if you want more content that challenges conventional financial wisdom. The path to freedom is shorter than you've been told. The only question is whether you're ready to take it.